shave it.
I know, that's the problem. You get used to
Pondering.
Yeah, and then you cut it off, and then you're like, what do I do with my hands now?
You can still do it, but just
Yeah. Then
There you
I
go.
start doing this.
Teresa's.
Oh, welcome everyone. We are now live. And are we expecting Chris Workman?
Go ahead. You're all set, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for being with us here today for today's city council meeting for the city of Philomath. Today is September 9th, 2024. And we just had a work session on mandatory reporter training. We're getting ready to get started with our regular meeting, and we'll first get started with the roll call.
John Roddick. Present. Ruth Causey. Here. Megan Cocker. Here. Matt Lehman.
Here.
Christopher McMorrin.
Here.
Chaz Jones.
Here. Excellent.
Here. May I ask, did you want to start with the council or the Urban Renewal Agency tonight?
Let's go ahead and do Urban Renewal Agency.
Roll call works with that one.
Great. Okay, so I'm just scrolling down to that page. Actually, no. Actually, let's go ahead and go to City Council. I apologize.
Mike will have to stay for the whole meeting if he does that.
So tonight on the agenda, we have 3 primary items, and that includes the fiscal year 2023-2024 financial audit, the city recorder recruitment procedure, and a conversation about our options regarding the Psilocybin law. So first, we'll go ahead and get started with the fiscal year audit. Mike, do you want to kick us off?
Sure.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. I skipped right down. First of all, do we have anybody there for public comment?
Yes. David Lowe has signed up to comment. Is he coming?
David has signed up and he's not on, he was going to appear on Zoom. I do not have him on Zoom. I was about to send him an email very quickly and ask him if he was jumping on, but the answer to the question is we have someone signed up, but he is not here.
I'm wondering if he was anticipating that the Urban Renewal Agency would go first.
We didn't discuss that possibility when he signed up.
Okay.
I'd say let's go ahead and just table the public comment for now. We can come back to it when Mr. Lowe arrives, if he arrives.
Sounds great. So we'll table the public comments and we'll move on to the consent agenda. And do we have a motion to move forward with the consent agenda? Councilor Causey?
Move that we approve the items on the consent agenda as presented.
Excellent. So we have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Lehman. Any further conversation, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we can get to the new business and the audit. Mike, you want to kick us off there?
It's actually the 22-23 fiscal audit. We kind of put it aside and started budget and forgot about it. So we're starting the 23-24. We need to finish this on council so we can move forward. What I've given the council is basically what I've given to the Finance and Admin Committee. Gave them the financials, gave them a link to it. So you can look at the financial report. We'll go through that briefly. Then I gave something new that the committee asked to give. It's probably 4 or 5 pages. Agenda item DOI or L1B. It's the city fund layout for the annual audit. I got talking about governmental versus proprietary. We have 2 types right now. Our everybody does have nationwide. General fund, development review, streets, community development, urban renewal. That list will show you how the government layout. That's how you should see it within the financial report. That's just something new that I gave the council so you can look at it and try to follow the report. The report can be daunting, but anyway. Okay, with regard to the financial audit for the 22-23 year audit, we did get an unmodified opinion. It's called a clean opinion. So that means everything's in good shape. We're following GAAP and GAS. GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles, and GAS is generally accepted auditing standards. So we cleared that. Single audit, you don't always have a single audit. The rules for that is if you have $750,000 over just in government grants or one specific grant, which we did. We all got, it's nationwide, we all got the ARPA. So that one pushed us over. We got $1.1 million. The only thing that we had wrong there is we had a significant finding and we weren't reporting to Oregon Business for their part of the grant. So we fixed that since then. Chris has been communicating on all the time with Philadia and Eugene. So that condition, there's a report in here, you'll see that, and that's been taken care of. Then the other thing that's in the financials, it's on page 84 through 85, really starts page about 78. That's where the single audit starts. That's where all the compliance reports come out. The compliance reports they have to follow, we have to review Oregon budget law, make sure we follow the law, procurement, and internal controls. That's just a few that they go over. There's a list they go through. It drives us nuts in finance, but it's just we kind of gotten used to it. So the internal control report, there's going to be something further on with the management letter. We'll talk about it then. And then back in page, I think I gave you an outline of how we finished the 22-23 fiscal year with moving fund balances. You've already seen them in the 24-25 budget. That's how we started the numbers right there. The only thing that I want to point out that the water fund was in a negative position when we started that year. And since then we've increased the rates, so we'll see how that works out in this coming year that we're currently in. And then the government's letter, what I'm doing is showing you, these are the letters that come out, the council needs to look at. The governance letter is directed to the council. It's basically they're telling you what they've done to complete this audit. And then finally, as part of that, there's a management letter that Chris and I signed, giving it to the auditor. That closes the audit when we give them the management letter. So that's the 5 or 6 reports that are found within this book. I really don't want to go through and point out in all the reports that I've shown you, they kind of laid out perfect, but that's for me. I mean, if you've got questions, give me a holler, come on, give me a call, and I'll go through them line report by report. And here it's kind of, it can be like the report, it's daunting, all the reports. Now, the one thing that I did want to talk about on page 84 and 85, we did have some budget violations for over expenditure. We have a couple there, 42. I did a budget adjustment, probably shouldn't have done. Once I do a budget adjustment, I have to follow through. I moved it through, but it put me into a negative position, Fund 42. So there's not much I can do there. And then on the debt service, when we set this loan up for the water treatment plant, $9 million loan, Jones set it up as a loan. And so we get further down into the road, it turned into a grant. And what that does is it shifts how it goes into a different category. To me, it wasn't big and major, but to the auditors, it was, because it changes some of the reports that they do. So they gave us a significant opinion on it. I fixed it this year. I mean, it's not that's all I can do. That's my fix. And then I couldn't believe in all my years I've ever done this. Another one, they gave us we missed our budget message in our published document. Chris did it. It's all in the notes. It's everywhere. But when I published the budget, I forgot his message. So we've fixed that from now on. So So that's kind of the big overview of the budget or the financial reports. One thing that I would like council, one of these days, if you have time and you need something to fall asleep with reading, go and read the management discussion analysis report. It starts on page 1 of the audit report. That's the underpinning. The MD, I call it, starts on page 4. That highlights at a high level how the city for the year in different categories. And they go through the financial highlights and they go through the financial reports, and it's laid out line by line. So you can see history, 3 or 4 year history of our financial report. The statement of acquisition is something they added back with statement GASB 34 back in 1989 or something. But that's something it's okay. The big thing that I read is I go to page going in further into the document, and where this is where the bank people live. They go to page 21. 21 is where the bank people live. We're actually on an accrual basis. The net assets, the statement of net assets, and the statement of activities. We bring all of our debt into it, and it skews a lot of our ending fund balances. You can't use that number for anything really. So that's the big reports that we'll look at. Then all those other reports I talked to you about are in the back. They start on page 78 and go on from there. In another spot, if you want some reading material to put you to sleep, you can read the notes to the financial. I have to read it every year, and I don't know how we do it, but we make through it. Pretty much the report that I have for the 22-23 fiscal year. Any questions? Yes.
So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. We went over this in the budget committee. Has anything changed in this report since then?
No, that was finalized when we went over it. That was the final report.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I was like,
I want to open it. You don't want to open it.
awesome.
Diane?
I was just gonna, the page numbering system is very difficult to follow because we've got a 78 and an 80 and a 1 and several ones and 21. I still haven't found that one, but anyway.
Okay.
That was my question.
The numbers that I was referring to, that was the financial report. It's not this package that you
It's
have.
not what we have.
It would be this report that I'm on.
It's in one of the attachments that was in print.
Okay.
Okay. I know.
It's just a little, I mean, I read it and
What I used
everything you said made sense, but
What I
I,
used to do, was give everybody a copy of this.
Oh, yeah.
We've gone electronic nowadays, and yeah, I'm sorry. I'll make a note to keep that back in my head. I'm referring to the financial page.
Any, Counselor Causey?
I have 2 questions. I know that there's a commitment for the city manager or the assistant city manager to review the journal entries.
Right.
I just want to be confident that they have the capacity.
I have a lot of confidence in them.
I'm sure they're capable of doing it.
Okay.
At the time, yeah.
I've never had a city manager that has not been able to follow me. Chris is fine. He knows what I'm talking about. I show him the paperwork, and
Yeah, we've been sitting down monthly too, and the 3 of us, so that's taking place.
Okay.
we go through it line by almost line.
Okay.
I think she's more concerned about our time as opposed to our capabilities.
Yeah.
Sound like
Yes.
a little of both, really.
Maybe a little.
Okay, my other question is that I noticed that the letter to the city management was signed off on January 2nd or 4th. I'm wondering what took it so long to get before the council.
Timing. Normally we're done on the 31st. 31st fell on a weird time now, if I remember right. It's like on a Saturday or something. I think it was a Sunday. And so January 1st, everybody was off. we were done on the 31st or the 30th, but everybody disappeared. So like I said, we didn't violate anything.
You're just asking why it took so long to get here. Is that your question? Oh, budget.
Right.
I think it's just the budget.
I understand. I'm
New
just
audit.
starting the new audit for the 23-24 year. It takes us almost 6 months with the advent of all the new GASB, since GASB 34, it takes us 6 months. When back before GASB 34, I remember my boss and I sitting down in September saying, we're done. We didn't have to do anything more. We're done. We handed it to the auditor. We had 5 months off. So nowadays it doesn't happen. It's just all the new GASB, all the new requirements, the notes themselves. They went from with the addition of the PERS and the PERS note, and then our nationwide ICMA. That added 50 pages to our note. I think I'm exaggerating. It was monstrous. It takes us, everything in this audit is tied to something. Every number is tied back to something, and you have to create. You should see my spreadsheet. I'll bring it and show you all one time. It's full. It's linked. So I don't have anything to tell you. It's complicated anymore.
No, I believe that. You said you're starting the audit for 23-24 now,
Right.
and you would expect to complete it by January.
I hope. And if it doesn't, we put in it for an extension with the state. And it's becoming commonplace anymore.
So my question is, between January and September, does it take until September?
Oh, no, what happens is we close on June 30th is the last day of our fiscal year. And the first 2 weeks of July, we're closing all the AP. Then the next 45 days, we're counting all the revenue, closing out the revenue. So on September 1st, I start the audit. And so what we're paid number 9, right, the 9th today, I just started the audit.
Right, I believe that.
Yeah. And so from September 1st through December 31st, I'm crunching numbers, the auditor's coming in, we're working hand in hand. I'm usually done by October, November.
Uh-huh.
And then they're done by December 15th. That's what they're supposed to be done.
Right.
And so we got 16 days to close it out after that.
Okay, why not present it to council at that point?
Because they're not done. I can't present to the city council until I have an opinion from them. When I get the government's letter, when I do my management rep letter, Chris and I sign, that closes the audit. That's when they can produce their opinion. So usually that's on January 2nd is when they approve their thing and give financials. I think we presented to Finance and Admin Committee in February. So getting it back to council, we have to go with the steps we have to go through. We have to go through the Finance and Admin Committee first.
Still confused why it's, let's say even March, why we didn't have this presented to council starting in March until now. Is the question.
I understand if that's okay. I just, like I said, we got started on budget and totally forgot about it. And then I had some personal stuff come up with my family. And I didn't even think about it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, anytime after I went to the finance admin, it could have come to the council to be looked at, but by that time, in February, March, April, we're dealing with the 24-25 budget, and it just got left off.
I understand.
Councilman Warren?
Next year, we'll be able to get it in front of you early.
One question, just, I know when I was on the school board, we actually had the auditors come and present this to the board instead of having our own staff do it. Is that something the city would consider doing in the future? Just because then any questions about the audit itself can be answered directly by the auditors, which I think we appreciated.
The next presentation of the audit will be by the auditor. It's in his contract. We have a new auditor. Singer Lewack, gentleman, he will put on a heck of a show for you. He's very dynamic.
Thank you.
The agreement with this auditor did not include a presentation to the council.
Right.
They were kind of pitch hitting for us, if you'll recall.
Yeah.
So they were grateful that they came in and to do the audit for us. But when we switched to auditors, we made sure that was included in that normal contract, which is more typical. So this is kind of an atypical audit report as far as presentation goes.
Are there any additional questions or comments on the audit? We have a recommended motion. Councilor Causey?
To accept and approve the 2022-23 financial reports, related reports, governance letter, and management letter.
I second.
Great. We have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Crocker. Any further comments or questions? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. I'm going to go ahead and pause our current agenda and open it up for public comment. I see that we have David Lowe present. And thank you, David, for being here. Prior to public comment, we do have a written statement that we read off before every comment period. This time is intended for individuals to speak and for council to listen. Members of the council will not discuss topics or make decisions during this time, but may take comments or requests under advisement, assign topics to a future council or standing committee agenda, or request staff to take an action. Comments about a topic scheduled for a public hearing should be given during the hearing and not during the visitor's comments. Testimony time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a 30-second warning will be provided. Speakers should provide their name and city of residence. Providing council with a written copy of your comments prior to the meeting is always appreciated. And those who attend our public meetings are required to adhere to the council's rules and proceedings and observe the same standards of decorum as members of the council. Further, at the discretion of the presiding officer, members of the public who fail to observe these rules and procedures will ask to be discontinued speaking and will not be allowed to speak for again the remainder of the meeting. I know that you're familiar with all that, Councilor Lowe. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you coming and offering public comment. But yeah, thank you for being here. Go ahead and get started.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Mayor and Council, I apologize very much for not being present at the appointed time. I'm in an area that I'm not usually in, rural, and I was having connection problems, et cetera, but here I am. At any rate, the thing I just wanted to mention to the council, and as you know, at the last meeting in August, the council very generously approved a request that Philomath Community Services had made for $6,000. And I just want to reiterate that we're very grateful for that. I'm the president of PCS and therefore speaking on behalf of the board of directors. The subsequent to that, though, when I read the article in the Philomath News and then watched the video of your deliberations from your council meeting, I had quite a few concerns in that I don't know if I didn't feel that the council was adequately prepared for the discussion, which was evident to me through the nature of some of the questions that were raised. I don't believe there was enough background that you had. I do know that our executive director, Sharon Thornberry, had provided some information to you, and that was presented for the city manager. So I did take the time to write a fairly extensive letter with some background that you all have. And I don't expect anyone to do anything today, so this is just informational. In the letter, I had a number of points. One of them did talk about looking at the source of the funding. And I did get an email back from city manager, which I assume you all know. I know Mayor Jones was copied on it. And to the effect that letting me know from Chris's perspective, the chain of events and what happened, again, as he did in council meeting, apologizing for the lateness of the communication getting to you and so on. But one thing Chris did mention is that the Finance and Admin Committee will be taking place later this month, and he sent an invitation to me to meet with the FNA to talk about, and he mentioned in the email specifically my thoughts or my request to maybe revisit the source of the funding uh, from social services funding, which you approved, which is great, but to another source. That is just one aspect. As you'll see in the other parts of my letter, there are other issues that I consider process issues that I think uh, looking at how things developed should be explored and hopefully to improve the process for getting information to the council to make informed decisions. I would like the opportunity, maybe the FNA committee, to be able to, well, I'll be present, but to be able to answer questions or anything that may have. I also I want to be clear that it's fine. I mean, the council has made this decision for the source of the funding, and that's fine. So anyway, thank you very much if I've exceeded my 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lowe. Appreciate you being here.
Okay, thank you. I'll sign off and watch you on YouTube. Okay,
Bye now.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Excellent. So we'll be chatting about that at the Finance and Admin Committee later in September. Okay. So now I'm going to, okay, so now we're going to go ahead and go to the next item of business on the new business and discuss the city recorder recruitment process. Chelsea?
So as you all know, our Ruth is preparing to leave us to go on new adventures. And we're very happy for her, but also sad, and it's leaving a hole, and we need to try to find someone to start working on attempting to, fill that hole and replace Ruth, which is going to be a tough job for sure. So in the staff report, I laid out that the city recorder position is technically an appointed officer, follows the same hiring procedure as for a department head. So generally the city manager makes a recommendation and the council approves, doesn't approve that, hopefully approves. And so Chris and Ruth and I sat down and talked about the history of city recorders, what happened when Ruth was hired, and just came up with a schedule and hopefully a plan that will work with the council, which does involve having kind of a second top candidate interview with the Finance and Admin Committee. So a lot of this is just timing, trying to get the timing to schedule things, get letters out, someone to give notice. So you'll see it's a fairly lengthy process, but this is the best layout that we could do, timing wise. I will say that we've received, I just looked through again before this meeting, and we have about 8 candidates who have some of the preferred qualifications. So we have the minimum qualifications, and then we have a set of, you need to have shown that you have experience doing certain types of duties that relate to the recorder, and then we have some preferred types of experience that would receive some preference points in application scoring. So we have about 8 people that match that, and we have another probably 12 that are generally that we're going to look through that are in the getting close to that section, but there may be some in there too that we're going to take a deeper look at those applications and see if there are other things in there that could move them up to the interview list. So the hope is that you'll go through this, take a look at it, let me know if you have questions.
Will there be an overlap between the new candidates and the current recorders, a training overlap?
There will be some of an overlap. So Ruth is kind of sticking around. There's a lot of the schedule is that Ruth is going to be at some conferences, some personal time off. So there's some time off that she's going to be doing during this time period. There will be some overlap. To be honest, just in our world of having new employees, it isn't always effective to have two people working 8 hours a day together when there's a new person. And that's because the new people have a lot to do. They want to meet people on their own. They want to sit at a computer and stare at it. So we're going to kind of try to have some just broken up maybe afternoons where that person can kind of think for themselves, get some questions together, poke around, and then follow up with Ruth. So we're not planning to do a full all on 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. We just, we've taken this with some other key positions here at the city. It's worked really well to just let the two people in the position decide what's working best for them. Yeah, so Ruth is perfectly willing, and we're gonna talk to Ruth about how to make that happen.
Excellent, thank you. Counselor Andrade.
I move to approve the recruitment process as presented.
Second.
Great, so we had a motion made by Counselor Andrade, seconded by Counselor Causey. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We look forward to moving through the process and are not looking forward to seeing fire, but we are very happy for him. So next on the agenda, we have we're discussing options around psilocybin regulation in the city. And Chris, you want to walk us through that?
Yes, Mayor, can we take a recess for just a couple minutes? Councilor Nielsen texted me, said she was on her way, but running a few minutes late.
Keep walking in the door.
So I'll just keep talking for a few more seconds. And
So we no longer need a recess.
One of those chairs.
Councilor Nielsen just joined us.
Councilor Lehman, would you like to make a joke for us while we're here waiting for a second? No?
I'm all out of jokes today, sorry.
Just thought I'd check, make the opportunity available. Hey, hello, Councilor Nielsen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We're just getting ready to just start discussing psilocybin regulation options. So Chris was going to kick off that conversation, and we're just running a little bit of time while you sit down and join us. So Chris, you want to go ahead and get started?
We also put quite a bit of information in the memo. Everybody had a chance to go through that. The first attachment there, as I referenced, was the memo from the City Attorney's Office. And again, hopefully we had a chance to go through there. I thought she did a really nice job of laying out a little bit of the history, how we got to where we're at, and some options going forward. And then also really appreciated her giving a recommendation from the city attorney. That's very helpful, I think, for the council. Again, don't have to take a recommendation from your city attorney or your city manager, but because it's hopefully there's no opinion of professionals that work for you. So that piece is all in there. Again, won't read that. Presume that everybody's had a chance to go through it. I kind of re-summarized in my agenda item summary what I'm seeing from other cities that we looked at over the last several weeks. Some of the time, place, manner restrictions that we're seeing in place within those cities and what they're looking for. And then gave a specific example for Lake Oswego for those time, place, manner restrictions on, what it was that they were looking at and why they were implementing time, place, manner restrictions, just so that you had a sampling of, if the decision is ordinance or time, place, manner restrictions or both. I thought it'd be helpful to include the model ordinance, which is provided by League of Oregon Cities, so that's in here. And then also some, not necessarily model language, but some sample language from Lake Oswego, which was one of the 7 or 8 cities that I looked at. And I just thought it was pretty straightforward and a good sampling, if you will. So the council for the decision for the council tonight, after some deliberation, and I'm happy to answer questions where I can, is would the council like to pass an ordinance which would put a ban in place for psilocybin and refer it to the voters at the 2026 election cycle? In the meantime, that ban would be in place, and then the voters in 2026 would either vote to maintain that ban or they would vote to remove the ban. So that's one option. The other option would be to not do an ordinance to ban, but to look at time, place, manner restrictions or regulations, similar to those I gave as the example from Lake Oswego, but again, we can get some direction from you. If that's the direction you want to go, then we can have that conversation tonight as well. Give me some direction on the types of time, place, manner restrictions that you're interested in. Or we can do both. We can both do a ban right now that would then go out to the voters in 2026, and we can look at adopting an ordinance that would place time, place, manner regulations on psilocybin centers, as well as psilocybin manufacturing, production, etc. So quite a few options out there. Try not to overly script it, but I'm mostly interested in hearing from your opinion, where you're at, or questions you might have about options in front of you.
Excellent. Thank you. We have Councilor McMorrin.
Two things, I guess. The first, I just do have to express, I'm a little frustrated that we didn't get to this earlier, since we had talked about in our strategic planning wanting to get something on the ballot this year. So I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but I am frustrated with that because now we kind of have to scramble with these other options. And I guess on that note, I wanted maybe a little more clarity on the idea of banning it for 2 years until the voters can decide on it. Because even in the legal memo, it sounded like Ashley said that that was not the legislature's original intent, was for us to be able to do that. So I guess I'm just a little confused with that option, and if that is actually legally sound. So I was hoping for a little more insight on that.
So some cities banned it back in 2022. Some cities passed a moratorium. Some cities didn't do anything. So here we are in 2024. Some cities are putting it on the ballot in 2024. Some cities still aren't doing anything. And some cities, similar to us, didn't take any action but are looking for a ban now to hold it in place to come before the voters in 2026. The way that what I've took from comments from Ashley in the memo and talking about the memo was she's heard from specific legislators that that wasn't the intent of the language, but she feels legally they're on very solid ground with the recommendation they've made to other cities, similar to Philomath, that a ban once passed by ordinance will be in place and effective until it gets voted on and upheld or rejected by the voters. So she feels very solid on that footing from a legal standpoint. Her comment is really just that that wasn't the original intent of some of the legislators when this was drafted. It was really meant for that first year in 2022 to 24. But there's nothing in that language that says it was only for 22 to 24. It's just as effective legal language for 24 to 26. And again, there's a whole spectrum, and I recognize the frustration not getting this out sooner. I'll take the owners for that. That's on me for not getting it in front of the Finance Admin Committee quicker and then getting in front of the City Council. We're skipping Finance Admin, just coming right to City Council because it did get brought up again last month. So I will own that part of it, Councilor McMorrin. But I will just add to it that cities across the state are all over the board on this as far as timing. And if the City Council's interested in a ban, that ban is just as effective if you pass it next month as it would have been if you'd have passed it 3 months ago or 4 months ago. So no harm done, I guess, but I do apologize for not getting in front of you sooner.
Councilor Crocker.
Very much interested in a ban. I realize that's my own personal opinion. I would also like to ask the process of the wording when the voters do get to vote on it, because I felt like last time the wording was confusing. I had a lot of citizens call me and say, I don't understand this. I don't want it here, but how, I don't know how to vote for this because I don't understand the wording. So is that something we can help with or approve beforehand? I mean, I think
Yeah, so
it was rushed.
the moratorium we have in place goes through the end of the calendar year.
Right.
And so as long as we've got something in place, we've got October, November.
Sure.
And if it were to get in front of the council members in November or even in December, it could be effective. We could do an emergency clause, which we hate. But if we wanted an emergency clause effective, January 1st, 2025, then essentially we wouldn't have any gap between the current moratorium ending and the new ban coming into place. So we would have time that we could bring language to Finance Admin Committee, bring it back to the City Council. That's language that the city attorney would write up, but we would want it to be acceptable to the council.
We're clear. And so that needs to be done before the end of the month, the language for the ballot measure in 2024, 26, excuse me.
The ordinance language, we'd want to get that done in, like I said, October and November. Work on it in October.
So it does need to be
Into November. We'd want to have it ready for the December meeting if we're going to do an emergency clause to have it effective January 1. Otherwise, because it's not effective for 30 days after it's passed. So then you're talking about the November meeting, so it's effective before the moratorium or the moratorium expires.
Excellent. And before we go to Councilor McMorrin, just wanted to give people a chance here. Councilor Lehman.
Yeah, so I'm not in favor of a ban. If I recall correctly, in Benton County and in Philomath, the measure when it was brought on the ballot passed. So I think we're presuming that our citizens want a ban, but I think we should give them an actual legitimate opportunity at the ballot box to determine that. And I think that we should work on some time and place restrictions in the interim. Effectively, what we've done with the cannabis situation is we've created time, place, and manner restrictions to the point where it's not feasible for there to be distribution within the city of Philomath. And personally, I feel we're kind of two-faced about that because we certainly enjoy the money that we get from the state for the cannabis tax revenue. But we have made it clear that we don't actually want a dispensary here in town. I think the jury's still out personally on the effectiveness of this type of treatment, but the evidence seems to be growing in favor of these treatments being effective for addiction, for PTSD, and for other issues. And so I don't want to disregard that out of hand, and I think we should leave it up to the voters. So I would be in favor of time, place, manner restrictions, and if we want to put a ban on the ballot, let's do that. We've chosen as a council and as staff to not prepare in time for this current election. That's a bummer, but it is what it is. So I think we should move forward with TPM and then bring a ballot measure if we want to contemplate a ban at the next available time.
Thank you. And Councilor Andrade, you're next.
Thank you, Councilor Lehman. I completely agree with you on, I think, all of that. I also thank you, Councilor McMorrin. I am also very frustrated, and in fact, I'm kind of angry because, we have been asking for, the council has specifically stated that we would like to have a town hall in order to discuss, this potential issue, this topic with our community members, to have a better understanding of what kinds of time, place, manner restrictions we might want to put on these facilities, or to, I am just also very frustrated because it's not like we haven't been asking multiple times within even the past couple months, to be honest. And as for the effectiveness of psilocybin, I think from what I have seen, the evidence, the scientific literature, it appears to be very promising, and I am happy to share some of that literature with people. I don't know if I can send it to the city recorder if people want to read it. And I've had community members reach out specifically about this topic, and very much saying if you don't consider this, this potentially sends a message of not caring for the people who could benefit from this treatment, such as military veterans, people who are houseless abuse survivors. This is something that we should really be open to, and find a safe way to allow it to be available.
Thank you. Councilor Nielsen.
Feelings about psilocybin, and I think for every article you find supporting its benefits, there are equal a number of articles supporting the damages done from psilocybin, long-term psychosis, other things that are occurring as a result of that. And so I think it's a really mixed message that we see in the media on what side you're on of the psilocybin fence line. I consider the size of our city and the proximity we are to Corvallis. I consider the public transportation we have and the transportation that most of us, most individuals have to get the things that they medically need. We have a really good public transportation and other services that transport individuals for the medical needs that they have. So I think having psilocybin distribution in our town would be a huge mistake. And so, and believe me, I'm not just speaking for myself. I have numerous circles of friends, community members, numerous individuals have come up to me and said that they really do not want psilocybin service centers in our town. And we're not talking one or two, we're talking numerous ones. And as far as the last ballot, I think that the wording in our last election was very confusing and very one-sided. I think we have a much better, more balanced, or maybe not balanced, but we have an idea of both, a little bit of both sides of the issue more now than we had during the previous election. So I agree with Matt, maybe that we need to put this to the voters, but I think meanwhile, in respect and for the safety and well-being of our city, and for the well-being of our community members, we need to be responsible and allow, put this on the ballot for them to have voice and for their voices to be clearly understood and let them have their voice be heard through their vote, but meanwhile protect them from any adverse effects of what psilocybin could bring to our community. So I'm for a time, place, and manner ordinance. I'm for getting a ballot measure on the ballot for a permanent ban. And I think we need to be really responsible and consider the whole of our city and not just simply the few loud voices.
Thank you. And I'm going to get to Councilor Causey and then Councilor McMorrin and then Councilor Crocker. But before I do, I did want to mention in response to Councilor Andrade, she made a comment. Chris, we still have time to do a town hall on this topic as we develop language. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can do a town hall. I mean, I think part of the frustration is not making it onto the ballot this year, and it's got to be an even year. So I think that's a frustration. We have talked about doing a town hall on this topic. We've talked about doing town hall on a lot of subjects, and we've done a few of them, but we've not done a lot of town halls on a lot of subjects because there's timing, there's effort and time that goes into place for any of those, as everybody well knows. So, but yes, we could do something between now and the end of the year.
Sorry, thank you. And Councilor Causey.
Okay, a couple of thoughts. I'm in agreement with a ban on this. I think we've had a ban on it for 2 years, and I think it's continue that. I believe under the previous ballot process, it was sold to the voters as a panacea that was going to help anyone who had PTSD. And I agree with Councilor Andrade that this psilocybin's may promise, but I don't believe that it's up to us to develop the process by which they should be administered and controlled. And I think even the centers that have been set up to administer these psilocybins cost thousands of dollars. It's ridiculous. I mean, the people who need this or need some kind of treatment for PTSD are not going to be served by these centers. They're not going to have that kind of money for the most part. And this is not going to be covered by insurance. And I think it's ridiculous to imply that it's going to help anyone with that kind of issue. So I would support and taking it to the voters.
Thank you. Counselor McMorrin.
So as you all know, I sometimes have strong opinions about things, and for some reason or another, this is not one of those things. I am pretty agnostic about this issue, but I am not agnostic about democracy. And I think that I would like the voters to make this decision, just since I don't know if I can. And because of that, I do think it would make sense to keep our current status quo until the voters can make a decision. I just don't like the idea of like, oh, surprise, you can open a distribution center and then 2 years later we're going to make you shut it down. I think it makes the most sense to maintain our status quo until the voters make a decision, but we need to then draft our time, place, and manner restrictions that would go into effect if the voters vote no on a ban in a way that honors that intent and does allow some amount of psilocybin in town. Because it's not fair to put it to the voters whether they want a ban or not. They vote no on a ban, and then we pass time, place, and manner restrictions that effectively are just a ban as well. I think we need to leave it up to the voters. I regrettably, we have to wait until 2026 to do that now, but I do think it makes sense to maintain our status quo until the voters can make a decision, but then to really respect that decision. And if they vote that they want a ban, there's a ban. And if they vote that they don't want a ban, we have time, place, and manner restrictions that do actually allow that to happen. We don't circumvent that through tricky time, place, and manner restrictions. So I think that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Counselor Crocker.
I have several thoughts regarding the fact that Benton County passed the original law to make it legal. I have talked to a lot of people, and I'm also not talking 5 or 10, but everyone I've talked to, they thought it was going to be medically regulated. It was going to be a prescription written. In fact, the original wording talks about the patient, which implies to me medical. And I thought it was going to be medical. I think it has great promise for people that are under the care of a physician to treat the various ailments. But it is not medical. It is a person with a high school graduate diploma that has gone through 30 some hours of training, and that's it. They have, but I've done a little bit of research. It's averages $1,500 for one session of psilocybin in our state. It is still a substance one federal drug, so it is not. It's highly. I can't think of the word. You're going to get addicted to it. It's highly addictive, and it's. They say there's no medical, and I'm willing to say that there might be some medical benefits, but I would like to see it under a physician. In addition to the $1,500, there's 25 outlets in our state right now, and actually one of them has already had to close because there were not enough customers. Each of these 25 have had averaged just over 100 for the last entire year. Now, it was not until June of 2023 that they even opened the shops because they didn't have their act together when the Oregon Health Association was trying to pull it all together and say on June 1st or January 1st it would be ready. It was a year and a half later before it was ready to even put in. So it's been going roughly in a year. Some of them are going to go under if they don't get more customers, but at the price of $1,500, not just everybody can afford that. And it is not, because it's not a medical treatment, because there are no physicians involved, it is not going to be covered by insurance. So it's highly expensive. Anyway, so it's a whole different thing than I originally, when I first read the first ballot measure to get 109 or whatever it was, I, as well as a whole bunch of people, thought it was going to be medically prescribed, and it is not. And the actuality of what it is a whole different thing. I also thought there would be more than 25 by now. I thought there would be hundreds of these things. The problem is they are graduating. These facilitators are getting trained, and then they have no place to work because they've had 325 people go through the training to be a distributor of this, and there's just not the call for it. So it's a whole different thing than we originally thought. I agree. If the voters have a clear thing to vote on and they vote to have it here, I agree. We should honor what they say. I have not found one person that wanted it here. So, and I've asked, but I've been wrong before. But I do agree that we should follow what the voters say. And as long as our legal language is clear, I have no trouble doing that.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Thoughts? Chris?
I'll just add one thing, Mayor. I'll note that it was referenced earlier with the time, place, manner restrictions as they're related to marijuana. Just for perspective, when the council looked at those, we were looking at language from the state attorney general on recommendations for cities to take into account when we were looking at time, place, manner restrictions. And that list was not overly extensive. It was, there's 7 or 8 bullet points that the state attorney general said to be conscious of as you were making these types of regulations over marijuana dispensaries. The city council looked at those. The city attorney at the time, Mr. Brewer, reviewed those and made a recommendation of time, place, manner regulations for the city's code that were a reflection of the attorney general's points of concern. For psilocybin distribution or centers, we don't have that similar language from the attorney general, and many of the provisions for marijuana probably aren't as relevant for the psilocybin. Just as a quick example, not to speak to it too much more than what I have an understanding of, the marijuana dispensaries there's a retail component to them. It's cash only because it's a federally still on the list as a Schedule I drug, and so there's a lot of transactions of cash. And so that brought up concerns for the Attorney General that these could become targets for crime, that they could have concerns not only for, the criminal is going to do the crime, but for the stores themselves, that they could be easy targets. And so the city, as an example, made a regulation that those marijuana distribution centers be within 2,000 feet of the police department, so we could make sure we had quick response to those potentially high impact crime areas that have the cash proceeds. With the psilocybin, as we've just heard, that doesn't to be so much of a concern, right? There's not this retail component, a lot of cash on hand every day on any given day. And so I don't think, as an example, a 2,000 radius within a 2,000 radius of the police department would be an appropriate place restriction that we would look to. The only place restrictions that I've seen other cities look at are distance from schools. Those tend to be pretty similar, kind of copycat to marijuana, 1,000 feet up to 2,000 feet at times. If there's a river or an interstate that kids can't cross, I've seen that drop down to like 500 feet. And that was mostly on the premise from the Attorney General that they didn't want these psilocybin centers to be able to promote to children, right? Because that's within the state laws, they can't promote. So the argument is, well, if you're right by a school and you've got advertisements and things up, you're promoting to the children, even if it's inadvertently. And so if we keep them 1,000 feet away or more from the schools, there's less likelihood that you're going to be promoting your product to children or underage people. So just as an example, when we're talking about time, place, manner restrictions for psilocybin, we're not going to be looking at as extensive of time, place, manner restrictions as what we currently have for marijuana dispensaries. And whether that's a good thing or bad thing is up to you. I'm just telling you, we're not going to have that comprehensive list. We're mostly going to look at location from schools, potentially location from other psilocybin dispensaries or centers, excuse me. There was some language, I'll just relay back in one of my cities I looked at, where the recommendation from the planning commission was to not cohabitate a storefront or a strip mall with a liquor store because it's illegal to use alcohol or consume alcohol in a psilocybin center. And so that was one of the recommendations for location is let's not have them co-locate in the same strip mall. And when we got to the city council level, they said, well, it's illegal to use alcohol. It's not illegal to have a center next to a liquor store. And they removed that as one of their location restrictions. They said, state law already kind of trumps this. We don't need to be nitpicky about it. So again, if we're going to allow them and have time, place, manner restrictions, just have in your mind they're going to be fairly simple and not as comprehensive as what we have for the marijuana dispensaries, just because the impact is going to be much different.
Thank you. Councilor Causey?
To direct staff to prepare an ordinance that enacts a ban on psilocybin manufacturing and centers to be effective January 1, 2025, and to be voted on at the next available election and next available general election 2026, with the ballot language to be reviewed and approved by the city council.
Second.
I'm sorry, who made that second?
Diane Crocker.
Okay. So we have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Crocker. Bruce Post, did you get that all? Would you be able to
I was
read?
about to ask Councilor Crocker, it sounded like she read the last extra sentence maybe that she added. Language to be
reviewed by the city council, ballot measured language to be reviewed by the city council.
And Ruth, when you get a chance, would you be able to?
The ordinance is the ballot measure language. Whatever, I guess if it's a.
Yeah, the ordinance itself will specify the language that the voters will see.
So then we have to have approval over what the ordinance is called?
Okay, then I will.
I think your language is fine. I just want to make sure that,
Okay.
yeah, okay. I think the language is fine. The attorney will prepare the ordinance, that'll get reviewed.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you for clarifying.
So, the city recorder, would you be able to repeat the motion?
Direct staff to prepare an ordinance that enacts reasonable time, place, and manner regulations.
No.
No? I'm sorry.
Just to get to that.
Can you read? I thought I was tracking you. Okay. To direct staff to prepare an ordinance that enacts a ban on psilocybin manufacturing in centers to be voted on effective January 1 to be effective January 1, 2025, and voted on at the next available general election 2026. Ballot measure language to be reviewed by the city council.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just need to. Hang on, let me get it back to you.
So we have a motion made by Counselor Causey and seconded by Counselor Crocker. I note that there's no reference to reasonable time, place, or manner regulations in the motion. And Counselor McMorrin.
Is that something we could do in a separate motion after this to direct staff to draft the time, place, and manner restrictions that would go into effect if the ban is not passed, and to have those ready by, the end of 2025 or something, so that I just think then voters can be informed of, like, if you vote yes on the ban, it's banned. If you vote no on the ban, this is the exact time, place, and manner restrictions that will go into effect. But can we do that as a separate motion?
Maybe a separate motion.
Okay.
Counselor McMorrin for the question. Counselor Lehman.
First, I disagree with this, but second, I think that we should amend the motion so that we have to include the time, place, and manner restrictions in the ordinance, so that there is no confusion, because this apparently is all about the voters are too stupid to make up their own mind to begin with. So let's put all the facts into the ordinance so that everyone sees them from the get-go, instead of, oh, we just want to ban it, or we don't want to ban it, and then maybe we'll tell you what these time, place, and manner restrictions are if you are foolish enough to vote to pass this. So I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to include the time, place, and manner restrictions developed by the city council in the ordinance.
Second.
So we have a motion to amend made by Counselor Lehman and seconded by Counselor Andrade. Correct? Thank you. Counselor Causey.
If we include time, place, and manner restrictions in the ordinance, I think the voters are gonna be extremely confused as to whether they're voting on a ban or time, place, and manner restrictions.
And that apparently everyone was duped to begin with. So I'm saying, let's put it all on the table in one thing. If you vote yes on the ban, it's banned. If you vote no on the ban, these are the time, place, and manner restrictions that are going to be in place. Vote appropriately, instead of just vote to ban it or not to ban it, and then, effectively we banned it anyway with the time, place, and manner restrictions. I think it just gives people all of the information instead of just some of the information.
Why not just specify that there will be time, place, and manner restrictions rather than?
Because I know what will happen, and you know what will happen, and that is the time, place, and manner restrictions will put into effect that will effectively be a ban. And I would like that on the ballot measure so that people understand that our city council has decided, even though none of us are doctors, none of us are psychologists, none of us are addiction treatment specialists, that we are more than capable of determining the best outcomes for every citizen of this community, and we're going to make that judgment for you. And I would like that put in writing so that everyone can see it from the get-go.
Thank you. Counselor McMorrin.
I absolutely agree with the spirit. I would love for it to be in the ordinance. I guess, just are we confident if we need to have that hammered down by November, that that's enough time to make sure we are doing a really thorough job developing those time, place, and manner restrictions? And if we're confident of that, great, I'm for it. I just don't want us to rush through that and then promise the voters something that we aren't, that, maybe we rushed through, as opposed to, I still think we should promise the voters something before the ballot measure goes out, but the ballot measure is not going out until 2026. So I guess I don't necessarily see a problem with passing another resolution next year enumerating those time, place, and manner restrictions, but I am able to be convinced otherwise, Councilor Lehman.
Councilor Lehman, I'll let you respond.
We've had 2 years to put time, place, and manner restrictions in place, and we have opted not to do that. I don't see any incentive for us to do it in the next 2 years, since the ban will be in place, which is what it appears that is going to happen.
Councilor Crocker.
Is there not an agreement that if the voters vote to allow psilocybin into our city, that we won't be putting a ban on time, place, manner? Did that make sense? That we will follow the will of the voters. And if they want psilocybin centers in our city limits, then we will allow that. And if they vote to ban it, then we won't allow it. I don't know, and I understand what you're saying. We don't want to undercut and say, oh, you voted to allow it, but we're not going to allow it. We need to follow the will of the voters. Within reason. It can't be right next to a school, but yeah.
One last comment or one comment that I have is that it seems as if you might be able to request in this motion or in the amended motion that these time, place, manner restrictions be decided by June 30th of 2025 or some sort of a date. But just an idea. And I saw Chris, your hand went up, Workman.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have any problem with what Councilor Lehman's proposing on if we ban it, it's banned. If we don't ban, these are the time, place, manner restrictions that will be put in place. I don't see a problem with that. And I'm fairly confident that our city attorney's got a couple of templates already prepared that they've done for other cities. They can prepare very quickly for us that we can look at and review. So I don't think it's asking too much, and I think it makes it very clear to voters.
That's all. That's all.
Much more clear than the state measure was put before voters.
Correct. Agreed.
So we have a motion to amend, and I would like to vote on that motion if we have no further comments or questions. All in favor? Oh, Ruth Post, City Recorder, could you just repeat the motion to amend, please?
To amend to include time, place, and manner restrictions in the ordinance.
Thank you. All in favor of voting yes for the motion to amend, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we have an amended motion on the table. City Recorder, could you just repeat the motion that's amended?
To direct staff to prepare an ordinance that enacts a ban on psilocybin manufacturing and centers to be effective January 1, 2025, and voted on at the next available general election, 2026. Ballot measure language to be reviewed by the city council and to include time, place, and manner restrictions in the ordinance.
Okay. Any questions about the motion that we are getting ready to vote on? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. So we have motion carries 6-1. Okay. And Chris, so we are planning to have a town hall sometime in October or November, is that correct? Or September?
I wouldn't
On this
recommend
topic.
September because it won't get in the newsletter, but we can look at a October or an early November meeting.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll look at the calendar and the time. You want to try to do a Monday night in lieu of? Well, it wouldn't be in lieu of because we've got to meet, but anyway, I'll find a night. I'll put a few dates out there for everybody.
Great, thank you. Councilor Moore?
I might just recommend we do it in November because then we might have the draft language that folks could review and actually give us feedback on, as opposed to a feedback on some hypothetical language we're still developing. But that's just me.
One benefit of having a town hall might be that it could help us develop that language.
Sure, yeah.
Counselor Nielsen.
Agree with Christopher. I'd like to have more time. I think we need more time to kind of let this evolutionary learning process, being as we're not experts, become more developed and to gain more confidence in our community and in their wants and needs and in our own personal quest for more information on what we're really looking for in regards to this.
Thank you. Counselor Andrade.
I think that it's probably important to have potential language, draft language, making sure that to stress very clearly and multiple times that it is just a draft and that just to have something that the community can latch onto as like, okay, this is a potential reasonable outcome that we might have if we were to choose this language. Like, we won't know what community members will know coming into the town hall, and so giving those examples of what has been done and what hasn't, and what we think might be something that the community would like. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
And as for when, I mean, it sounds like it's fairly straightforward, so we could probably have it earlier if need be.
Chris?
Maybe, so that was my next question is what is the, I don't want to go too much into the weeds, but what is the purpose of the town hall? Are we informing people that there's going to be an ordinance before the council? Are we informing people of current health benefits and health concerns? Are we, there's a whole spectrum here, I think, of what we can cover in the town hall, and it comes down to what is the purpose of the town hall. And with that purpose, who would you like to have there? Because I can talk process, the attorney can talk the legality of it, but neither of us are professionals in psilocybin or pharmaceutical reps or doctors, et cetera, no greater than anybody else in this room. So if we need professionals with expert opinions there, that might take a little bit more time, and that's a little different discussion than if we're talking about, do we want this in town or not? Let's hear from the people. In a town hall, as a sampling of what we might hear in the future, that's just very different town halls and different setups.
Thank you. And Counselor Causey?
I might advocate having multiple town halls and doing it when we're closer to the 2026 election, which I know is a long ways off. But obviously, it's a very broad topic that includes, medical issues, legal issues, cost issues. And it might be helpful to have multiple town halls where you can discuss each of these various issues and have appropriate people representing various points of view. That might be, if you have a town hall now in November or in October, whenever, I, the voter, am going to think I'm voting on something in November. And I'm going to pull, I didn't see this on my ballot. Where is this? So I think it's going to be very confusing, and I think it's probably going to be inadequate to this issue. I mean, nothing is going to change from today until the November 2026 election.
That's not true. Because the moratorium expires at the end of this year.
It does, and we're continuing it effectively.
Only if the ordinance passes.
Yes.
I think that's the point of the town hall, or that could be a point of the town hall is do the people in Philomath want the city council to pass an ordinance that establishes essentially a ban from now until 2026, when the voters can vote on it?
So all that's gonna do is depend on who attends the town hall.
Because there's no vote for the people
No,
until
there's no vote.
2026, so we're not gonna get a concrete.
Yeah, I mean, it's democracy versus representative republic, right? And so you were elected to represent the people, and you may not know exactly what they think until the next election comes around. So, and I'm not being facetious, I'm just saying,
Right.
we can't always put our finger in the air and see what everybody else thinks. Sometimes we have to go based off of what we think or what we believe our constituents want us to vote on, and that's not an easy spot to be in. So I get that there's a process there. I'm not trying to overly simplify it. I am really interested in, this is good discussion about the town hall and what is the purpose, and is that purpose going to be served if we hold it in October or November versus later, and having both maybe, but I'm very keen on the idea to try not to confuse the voters either right before a major election.
Yeah, I do think maybe, I do really appreciate that, and I think probably waiting till after the election would be a good idea. But Counselor Crocker and then Counselor Lehman.
I agree that more than one town hall would be good. I think the first town hall would just be to maybe put the wording up, so, and then let the audience give us their opinions and their reading of what it was, what they wish. And then I would like to see a second one where we have medical professionals, one pro psilocybin, one pro against, opposed, thank you, to psilocybin usage as it is stated in the Oregon law. And so we get some opposing views, and just to use that to educate us all.
Thank you for that. So Chris, you need oh, sorry, Counselor Lehman.
Yeah, the only problem I have with any of that is that we were just told that whatever is in the ordinance is going to be the ballot measure. So what's the mechanism for changing that once we pass the ordinance? Can we?
A new ordinance sometime between then and 2026.
Just like we had 2 years to put together the time, place, and management stuff to begin with. That's my hesitation, is that it'll just get swept under the rug again, and then we'll be coming up for the election, and we still won't have time, place, and manner restrictions in place, and people will be again voting on something that they don't know the ramifications for.
Well, part of that decision in 2022 was uncertainty about psilocybin centers and what it was going to be and what the state administrative rules were going to be and all of these things.
Absolutely.
And so it was, at that time, the council chose not to put a ban in place, but to just do a 2-year moratorium.
Right.
I honestly couldn't tell you that I felt any more confident in the guidance and the use and or the benefits and or detriments of psilocybin centers today than I did 2 years ago. Right. That's just my opinion. I don't have a vote. But, in that regard, another 2-year wait to let's see how this really plays out, because these centers were a 1.5 years delayed in getting started. They've had 300 or so take place. I mean, I still don't know that we're really that much further ahead and what the impact of this is on a community than we were 2 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I also agree with letting the citizens decide. And I think that we're preempting that to some degree, because when they were presented with the opportunity to vote for it, the citizens of this town and of our county voted in the majority for it. And I'm not going to say what I'm going to say. It's not necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. So, Chris, do you have the information that you need about the purpose of this town hall, or do you not feel like you have that information yet?
I don't feel like I do. Sorry.
Okay. Counselor Andrade.
So, regardless of what I think, it sounds like one of the key points of some people and their hesitation around not enacting, or their hesitation around allowing psilocybin centers to be here has to do with, like, we don't know what things are going to look like. And based on what Chris had said earlier about the types of time, place, manner restrictions that are, you know, the bare minimum or whatever, like whatever the baseline is, I think if things are just gonna get, how do I say this? I guess, like, I feel like we have a starting point. Like, how can things get worse? Like, how can, like, are we gonna want to, like, add more time, place restrictions in play? Like, I don't know. I feel like that should be the point. I'm struggling real hard here. I had very little sleep last night, but yeah, I think the point of this town hall should be to find out time, place, manner restrictions, and that perhaps the for or against is just besides the point, because we have 2 years for everyone to get more educated on the topic and find out more about what the state and health authority are, like, doing to you know, set up the system.
Thank you. I think we should do this with a little bit of I think we should make a motion to make this clear. I'm just gonna throw one out there. I move that the purpose of the town hall, one, to find out from the people of the town, of the city, whether they are for or against a ban on psilocybin centers or manufacturing facilities. And two, if they are for it, the types of time, place, manner restrictions that they would like to see in place. Do I have a second?
Do you have a
Nope.
timeline for that? Do you have a timeline for that meeting? That's what I would decide on.
We're talking about November.
For the election.
Counselor Causey?
I cannot second this because it circumvents the will of the voters. You're gonna rely on the people attending the town hall to tell you anything about this.
No, that's not the purpose is just so that we can have some
What
information.
you said,
No, I apologize. Yeah. No, the purpose was to inform us as we move forward, but it's not to actually incorporate it in, or we could choose to incorporate it, but it's just to inform us. But maybe I said it wrong. Maybe Councilor McMorrin has a better, more clear motion.
Well, I think I was just going to make a motion that was a little more general, of like the purpose is to gather community sentiment and feedback on psilocybin facilities in city limits. And then the council can use that to inform time, place, and manner restrictions, can use it to inform a ban ordinance, can use it to kind of inform any of that. But I feel like that's what we're asking for, is just that, you know, Councilor Crocker talks to her circles and Councilor Andrade talks to her circles and I talk to my circles, and just kind of a more broader opportunity where all of us are there to talk to folks and kind of gather sentiment and gather information about the issue at large. I think that's what my hope would be, instead of kind of prescribing it specifically to one decision or another. But
And do you have a succinct motion that you were wanting to make?
Yes, I can do my darndest. I move that we hold a town hall in November of 2024 to share information about psilocybin in city limits and to gather feedback on community sentiment about psilocybin in Philomath.
And psilocybin service centers and manufacturing, are we just?
I was just going to say psilocybin and then
Okay.
it's up to everything.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Counselor Crocker. I think Counselor Crocker seconded. Is that what I'm seeing?
I have a
Okay.
follow-up question.
Go ahead.
As part of the motion, you said to also give information as well as, but my question is, what information? Are we talking about information of possible time, place, manner restrictions only? Are we talking like potential for and against? Like what?
I mean, I think I'm open on that, but I think what I was intending was more just kind of the legal, like where we're at, what the options are, and kind of how time, place, and manner works. And sort of the history of the original statewide ballot measure and then the city ballot measure. And so I think that was kind of what I was imagining, just to Councilor Kazi's point of, I think, it's easy for folks to get confused about kind of, wait, didn't we already vote on this? But then we voted on it again, and now we're going to have to vote. It's just to kind of share what's happening. I think if we want to have experts come and talk, I would be open to that. I just know that's maybe a heavier lift, but that's what my intent was.
Thank you. Any further discussion, comments? I would really lean against having people, professionals speaking for or against in this, like benefits and detriments. I think that the potential for sharing misinformation or just sharing my, professional's opinion is too great. I don't know, I would lean against doing that, but that's just me.
Does that give?
Chris, do I see your hand up?
Yeah,
Councilor Nielsen?
So does Christopher's proposal give enough substance to arrange a town hall that you would feel comfortable and able to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the motion's fine with an added kind of consensus from head nod that when we're saying share information, we're not talking about opposing views on the matter. We're talking about, here's the process, here's the law that got approved by voters. This was the voting percentage in Benton County. This is what City of Philomath City Council did to put a moratorium in place. The moratorium's expiring at the end of the year. These are the options the City Council's considering at this time. Here's the motion that the council, gave to staff to draft an ordinance, and this is the language that we're looking at for the ordinance in its draft form. This is where we're at. We'd like to hear from you on your thoughts. I mean, if that's the information we're pushing out, I can prepare that, put it in a memo form. Even between now and then, I can run it by the council if you're okay with the memo. But essentially, I'm more than happy to facilitate this. We can pay to hire somebody to come in and facilitate. I feel like I can be pretty neutral on this in a town hall. We can have our mayor do this, or one of our mayors running for office. I don't really care who does it. I'm more than happy to facilitate and feel like I could facilitate that if that's the amount of information we're pushing out. But once we start getting into, we could put proposals for some time, place, manners, similar to what I did in the memo tonight. I'm kind of thinking a blend of Ashley's memo and my memo that's just informative, gives the history, background, here's where we're at. And then the opportunity for the public to provide comments, I think, is where it gets maybe a little bit dicey, right? On just, I don't know about dicey. It gets very open-ended, right? Because then that could be a 5-minute conversation, or it could be an hour when we're cutting people off. I just don't know what that looks like. But if that's the format and that's what's included in the motion by Councilmember Warren, then I got it. I can do that.
Councilor Kazi?
It will be important to include include some of the information that Counselor Crocker shared regarding number of facilities, services provided to date, cost, because I think the public kind of needs to know where we are now.
Thank you for that. So we have a motion on the table. Seeing no further comments or discussion, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Excellent. Chris, do you want to chat about anything in the management report?
We still have an urban renewal agency meeting to get to, so, I'll note well, not in just, or not in the management report, but those numbers look really, really good. Looking forward to seeing those go up a little bit more as the school OSU lets in. We usually see those numbers jump in the fall. So looking forward to that. The numbers are up over, if you look over this time to last year, we're up 40% on our bus ridership. If you go back 2 years ago, we're up 80%. So we've gone up 40% and then another 40% over the last 2 years. So 80% total. So that's phenomenal. Nice use of the bus, which is good. In my report itself, appreciate Ruth provided some comments on elections, on where we're at. I won't give you my lecture again about not using staff for election stuff. Everybody's doing great thus far, but thank you for that. Christensen's working on a design for City Hall. That project's going to be bumped a little bit further than what I was hoping, so that's going to be maybe more of a winter into spring project, but still anticipate that getting done this fiscal year.
Did no one express interest in Citizens Academy?
No, I was really disappointed. Yeah, we had 3 sign up by the date. We had 1 or 2 express interest after, but if it was just me, I wouldn't mind spending some time doing it, but we rely heavily on the school and the library and fire and police and public works and fire. You know, it's a lot to put into that, and I just, you know, for anything less than really 10 or 12 people, it just feels like a big heavy for a few. So we canceled again this year. We'll put it out again next year. We'll circle around, maybe put a little informal survey out, not right now, going into it, maybe first part of the year, we'll talk about time of year. You know, it seems like fall has worked in the past as people are kind of back on schedule and back from vacation and kids are back in school and you're kind of back into that mode, and we're trying to be, you know, between back to school and before the holidays season really sets in. Seemed like kind of the sweet spot, but maybe not. I mean, it's 2 years in a row we've not had a lot of interest, but so I don't know. I'm a little perplexed on it. If anybody has any solutions there on what to do to get an enrollment,
You can, if you can propose something really controversial right beforehand, that will do it.
That's what's triggered good enrollment in the past, but I don't necessarily want to go down that road. But I was thinking more like famous superstars to come or sing or something. But
I was just going to say that families are so busy getting ready for school. The September 5th deadline was a little early, I felt. They're trying to get their last vacations in and school shopping, and then, oh yeah, there was this thing, and it's too late now. So maybe move that
back a little.
Yeah.
Councilor Warren?
I had a council report. Should I wait or should I do that now?
I was just wondering, Chris, what if you reopen it till October or something? And just see if we can gather a little bit more interest.
Yeah, we just really start pushing it when we get into November. I mean, if we're not done by that first week in November, we really start losing people at the tail end. But yeah, I honestly think probably just best for next year, maybe just try to start a little bit later next year. But by the time we got word out that we were reopening it this year, I think we'd be in the same boat. We'd just be scrambling to get them in there. I mean, we have kind of this natural nutrient. Even if we start with 12 or 15, by the end of it, we're down to the 8 or 7 or 8 anyway. And so if we're going to even hit our 10, say that's a number, I still would be concerned we'd be down to 5 or 6 within a few weeks.
There's not
Okay.
a lot. Weather's bad, but January and February is kind of some dead months. Would that even be a possibility, or would weather cause too much havoc?
Float it out there again, put it out. End of the year when everybody's worried about holidays, we can put it out there and have that deadline. I mean, there's no perfect time for it, right? I do think, all joking aside, I do think that when we've had more controversial issues happening at the city, that's sparked people's interest in what's going on, and then that's led them to sign up for Citizens Academy. And many times we've even encouraged people in the audience that had disagreements, hey, come and do Citizens Academy, and that's worked really well. And people, I think, have come away a little more informed about how things work and the way things run and how to be involved and be an active voice. And those people have rolled over onto committees, and whether it be the school or city or fire district. I ran numbers a few years ago for League of Oregon Cities on the effectiveness of our program. I'll say back in the heyday, just a couple of years ago, and I was surprised even at the number of participants in that had gone on to serve and volunteer on committees within the community. So I do think it can be really effective. I am concerned maybe it's a timing thing, but I also think part of that is we just have been doing well as a community. I think there's a lot of really positive things happening, and knock on wood, we've just not had a lot of real big controversials come before the city. And when, unless something's negatively impacting somebody directly, they tend to elect people and let them be their voice and keep things running smoothly. So I need to advertise it at the Psilocybin Town Hall.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Invitations.
Thank you. And Councilor Moore, you want to do your?
I'm not opposed to looking at maybe a February, March, kind of in between first of the year and spring break time frame. Float it out there then and see if we get a few more hits. So I'm all for that.
Thank you. Councilor Moore, you want to do a council report?
Yeah, I just wanted to share again the email I had sent out to you all about the sort of local government coffee that we're trying to do on. I initially in my email said October 11th. That was a goof. It's October 12th, the Saturday. And it's just kind of bringing back our counselor coffees that we had done in the winter and spring. Since farmers market will be ending in October, starting those up again. And just for this first one, Commissioner Pat Malone had reached out about wanting to do sort of a joint city county thing. And then he had mentioned, why don't we try to get other folks involved? So I've also reached out to the school board to see if any of their members want to attend. So just to say, October 12th, about 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Timbertown. And if you want to join, just send me a text or an email or something so we can try to arrange and not have a quorum of any one body. And then I'll be scheduling hopefully the rest of the series monthly through the winter and everything. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Councilor Andrade?
I think Chris is gonna answer my question.
Go ahead and ask it first.
Okay, the workforce housing project that we had talked about with, I forgot their name already. Idra, yeah. And then also, we received, council and staff received an email from someone in the community about the workforce housing relating to Mill Pond Crossing, and I was trying to look through my notes and through whatever search functions I could find and couldn't remember the discussion on that, and was hoping for more information on that as well.
So not related to that, if I can go back to the topic with Councilor McMorrin
just
first,
kidding.
and then I'll come forward. So Councilor McMorrin, just a notice to you and to everybody, that is the date of the fire district open house, is October the 12th. And they go right from, I think, 11 to 2, but there's some prep ahead of that. And so just not to overly bombard that date. I wasn't sure if you were aware of that date or not. I think they just put it out this week. So just a caution to think about.
Councilor Lehman sent me an email about that. And we were not aware of that when we planned it, but I think we're still going to go ahead with it just since we're earlier in the morning. Unless if anyone has very strong concerns about that. I think we figured it would probably work out.
concerns, so we'll go ahead and move forward. I just want to make sure that's there.
Thank you.
With IDRA, we've not had great communication lately, so I can put a note to follow up there. I know there was more work being done on looking at some of the laws around that, some of the funding programs that were there. But I need to circle back and see where he's at on that. The email that we got, I did respond. I don't know that I copied everybody just because I was trying not to take things out of the meeting, public meetings, but I did respond and just informed that the page that was created on the city's site is about future project. Congresswoman Val Hoyle reached out to the city specifically and was asking about projects that we needed some funding for that were directly related to housing projects. And so we did some looking and identified Mill Pond Crossing future phases 3 and 4 as the potential for great workforce housing as far as being a little more affordable, you know, with the townhome option and things. And so we put some numbers together working with the developer on what those asks would look like for public infrastructure assistance, and put that to the Congresswoman's staff. Part of that request was they said if we had a landing page or something that talked about what that project would look like. And so staff created that page. It's very specifically related towards future development, future phases. There's no agreements and no partnerships with Mill Pond Crossing for current phases under development at this time. So if we get funding for it, then at that time we will explore what those future relationships and partnerships will look like, and that will all come to the city council. In my vision and the way that these typically have run in the past, you're looking at like a dollar for dollar. You know, if you're going to get X number of dollars from the city/federal government, then we're going to see dollar for dollar, you know, lower entry costs or down payment assistance programs or something, so that it's again a dollar for dollar benefit to the property owner, not to the developer.
Quick follow-up, thank you.
Sure.
So did we talk about this at all in a meeting, or is this very new information? Because I have a vague memory about, was it like assistance for Mill Pond Crossing, or was that a long time ago?
I'd honestly have to go back and look. I don't remember if we briefed the Finance Admin Committee on the request or not, or if it was kind of a last minute request that came in from her staff asking for projects throughout her district on things they could ask for. It might have just been at the staff level.
Okay.
And we didn't have a lot of time.
Okay, thank you. I suppose the request then would be if, I mean, the only way we would have found out about it if we weren't surfing the city's website is if we didn't get that email from the community member. So we could try to make more of an, I know you have a lot on your plate, but it would be awesome to have that information in front of us in meeting packets.
Yep, if we get awarded the federal funds, you will be the first to know.
Well, just the fact that we even have like a page for it indicates that we're shooting for something, like, you know.
And one last report. So on the same date, October 12th and October 13th, the Emerald City Jaguars are going to be doing tryouts for their professional team. So if any of you are interested in trying out for the basketball team, October 12th and 13th at the Philomath High School. And also, they're also hosting at the same dates a youth basketball camp, October 12th and 13th at the high school. I think it's like 10 to 2 or 11 to 2 or something like that. So that's pretty exciting. Councilor Lehman?
Yeah, a couple of things. First is I would like to encourage us to have council representation at the fire department open house. It's super well attended. I went last year. Tons of people there. There's plenty of room, so we could just have a table set up kind of like we do at or purportedly do at the farmer's market. So I'd like to advocate for that. And then regarding the Finance and Admin Committee, I know the service providers funding stuff is coming up. I would strongly encourage the Finance and Admin Committee to allow an opportunity for the applicants to make a presentation and be available for questions and answers. I've gotten feedback from the community that would be appreciated.
Don't you usually do that?
We didn't do it last year.
So can I a quick clarifying question, please? You would like them to come before the council, is that what you're asking? Every applicant to come before the council besides just the finance and administrative?
No, just the finance. I'm happy to have the finance committee do that. But I think the feedback I have received was that similar to what David Lowe was talking about earlier this evening, which is there was some input from the finance and admin committee that wasn't reflective necessarily of the position of the applicants. And they felt like since they didn't have an opportunity to talk to the finance and admin committee, that led to some confusion about either what they were doing or what their financial need was or things like that. So the feedback I had was, in the past, we used to get to go in front of the committee, make a presentation, and if people had questions, they could ask them then and we could answer them. And that didn't happen last time, and I think it led to some confusion.
If I remember correctly, Chris, we've stopped doing that the last maybe 3 to 4 years, right?
I think it's been at least a couple of years.
Yeah, the first year I was
About
here.
2 years, we've not done that.
And I think the reason that we've stopped, if I remember correctly, was that we started feeling like people who showed up, kind of the mess of what we had happened during the inclusivity committee when we first started trying to find folks or have them show up to the meetings and join the meeting, that it was kind of a problem, and we felt like we were judging folks based upon the presentations rather than in a subjective or rather than in an objective manner based upon just the application. I feel like we did that very intentionally so that we weren't bringing in information that was unfair to others that weren't able to present. Chris, is that your recollection?
Yeah, I'm gonna punt on this one a little bit. I for several years didn't attend those. I let finance director run that, and so I don't think I've attended that social service agency funding meeting for this last 3 or 4 years. So I don't have a good perspective, Mayor.
Yeah. I honestly just felt like it was fraught for problems when we had people show up, and I didn't feel like it also was reflected in. I didn't feel like it was reflected in how we made the decision. It was just something that took another couple hours to go through. But Councilor Nielsen, I saw your hand go up.
I guess I can understand both sides of that. Those that may not feel comfortable coming and presenting, making an oral presentation, public speaking is a huge fear for some individuals. And so I understand that could be problematic. But on the other hand, I think it would be really helpful on the finance committee to hear presenters present representing their organization and what their vision is for using these funds. So I see how that could be really beneficial, and because the written word sometimes can be somewhat unclear at times what their true proposal is incorporating. So I do think that it would be good. So I can see both sides, and so that's a hard decision for those that may have trouble in that public arena.
Councilor Andrade.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I feel like is, I understand why it's a good thing, and also at the same time, back to what you were saying, Mayor, I know like with the inclusivity committee, it was asking, it's like when you know someone personally and you ask a question, or you know that there's something going on, regardless of like if you're actually, like friends, or if you are like a liaison or whatever, like accidents happen in the way that people ask questions, and so potential leading questions, I think. I don't know. That's just my guess based on your take, but it looks like the city recorder has something.
Oh, thank you. Ruth?
I'll chime in because, unlike Chris, I've actually been there at those meetings the last several years, actually, for about 20-some years I've gone to those meetings. And, your recollection is pretty accurate, Mayor Jones, as to why the committee felt they had concerns that some people were better presenters, some people presented more passionately than others. The committee wanted to make a more neutral selection environment in terms of not because this person can present better than this person. And so, as I recall, a more specific effort was made to ask particular questions on the application to gain the information that the committee wanted to be able to review in making their decision. I also know that there was a concern then when the recommendations came to the council level that the members of the committee had heard presentations and the rest of the councilors had not.
Thank you for that reminder.
If I had my preference, I would maintain what we've been doing the last few years and not have presentations. It just feels more appropriate. Councilor McMorrin?
I'll be quick. I almost like the idea of them not presenting to the committee, but then doing a quick presentation to the council, not even necessarily to aid in the decision-making process, but a lot like Councilor Lehman, I've gotten feedback from groups that just feel like they don't really have a relationship with the council. And it's this weird kind of transactional thing where every year they just kind of submit an application and we spit money out. And this is kind of a great opportunity to have those folks just come to the council and talk about what they do for a minute or two. So that we think about them, not just when we're spending money, but, you know, as more of an actual relationship. So I'm happy to think about that more down the road, but that is just something that I've gotten feedback on that I think might be helpful, is having those folks actually have more of that presence before the council.
Yeah, we certainly could invite them to come and give public comment at that meeting, right? They would all be welcome to do that. Okay.
Mayor, can we get some clear direction there, just because we're gonna be, that meeting's on the calendar already, so we need some direction, and I think there's mixed views, so somebody maybe wants to put out a motion to give staff some direction on whether to invite the applicants to attend in person and present, or to not, and just to continue to, I believe all the applications have been received, that's closed already, so I think the motion would be either to invite or to not invite participants to attend and present at that Finance Admin Committee meeting.
Councilor Lehman.
I move that we provide the applicants an opportunity to present at the Finance and Admin Committee meeting.
We have a motion made by Councilor Lehman and seconded by Councilor McMorrin. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. All that abstain, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I was abstaining because I don't have it.
So it's 3-3-1, motion fails.
Great.
Okay. Councilor Cosley.
I move that we invite those who are awarded funds to make a brief presentation and introduction to the council.
Okay. So we have a motion made by Counselor Causey, seconded by Counselor Andrade. Any further comments or questions? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and close out the city council meeting and we're going to adjourn the city council meeting and go into the urban renewal agency meeting. Can we do a roll call?
Jessica Andrade,
Present.
Ruth Causey,
Here.
Diane Crocker,
Here.
Matt Lehman,
Here.
Christopher McMorrin,
Here.
Wilson. Here. Chaz Jones.
Here. Thank you. And first on the agenda, we have a consent agenda. Well, we have public comments. Is there anybody there present for public comment or signed up?
Don't see anybody, Mayor.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. To pass minutes for June 10th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So
Yep.
moved.
Motion made by Counselor Causey,
I'll second.
seconded by Counselor Nielsen. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we're going to discuss the financial audit. Mike?
Okay, again, it's the 22-23 financial audit, not the 23-24. The Urban Renewal Agency is a lot, it's less complicated than the city's financials. It did receive a clean and unmodified opinion. The agency still goes through the same compliance that the city goes through. There was no findings for it. So the governance letter and the management letter are presented in there, and like I said, that's the stuff that closes out the audit. One thing I always show to the city council, on page 4, you can see we do simple adjustments for adjustments or GASB 34 adjustment. That's where you bring in all the debt and the liabilities and everything into the financials. And if you take the number 2,516,000 and subtract out the 523, which is still liabilities deferred, you get a negative 1,993,705. That's why I tell you that GASB 34 is good to a point, but it really affects the urban renewal. See, the city or the budget, the bank, and everybody, they work with just the balance sheet numbers. So that's my report. Any questions?
Seeing none, we do have a recommended motion. Counselor Andrade.
Oh,
I was just going to say, are you referring to page 4 in the audit that you sent a link to? Because I saw people searching for page 4.
Sorry, yeah, that's the
Okay.
financials.
Okay, yes.
this is only 3 pages.
There's the link.
Yeah, no. I move that we accept and approve the 2022-23 financial reports and related reports.
We have a motion made by Counselor Andrade, seconded by Counselor Causey. Any further comments or questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that. And with that, we're going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you.